Today in the Daily Dose, Ellis Island. Between 1880 and 1924, nearly 25 million immigrants left their homelands for dreams of a better life in America. Coming mainly from northern, southern, and eastern Europe, nearly half of the sustained immigration wave came through Ellis Island. Of the 12 million who entered America through the island, tens of thousands were detained at Ellis hospitals for possible infectious diseases or other debilitating health concerns. During its peak years between 1900 and 1914, nearly 6,000 immigrants arrived at Ellis Island each and every day, requiring a massive hospital infrastructure to keep up with the flow. A 120-bed general hospital was built first, which would eventually expand to 3 times that size. A second psychopathic hospital sported 50 beds and an equal number of isolation rooms, while a 450-bed contagious disease hospital became the island's flagship structure. From its grand opening on January 1, 1892, until its permanent closure in late 1954, men, women, and children passed through Ellis Island on their way to new opportunities in the American experience. They passed through rooms and hallways jammed with the noise of mass humanity. Here they bought tickets for destinations throughout the United States. Here they traded drachmas, liras, and rubles for dollars. Here they heard and perhaps sang their first American songs as they awaited permission to pass over to a new land. For tens of millions of Americans today, many have relatives who came to America through Ellis Island, becoming part of the largest human migration in modern history. Of the millions who came, some would be turned away, but for the majority of immigrants, Ellis Island would forever be seared into their memories. For centuries, Europe had regularly lost her children to the lure of America, the land of opportunity. Yet as the 19th century came to a close, many Europeans experienced a new list of reasons to leave. Political unrest and industrialization had sparked a wave of increased joblessness and poverty from Italy and southern Europe north into the industrial cities of Poland and Russia. Downtrodden Europeans saw America as the future, perhaps their future, perhaps even a fortune to be made. In the southern European ports of Naples, Piraeus, Trieste, and Constantinople, immigrants boarded ships to America with hopes of a one-way passage, with hopes of finding work, with hopes of finding a safe place to live, and most of all, the hope of freedom from repression. In addition to wretched poverty and repression, Eastern Europeans had other reasons to seek a new life. Since many less than stable governments were conscripting young boys into the army, many never to be seen by their families again. And then there was the police, the historic persecutors of Armenians, Slovaks, and Jews.
You never know how hard it was to leave her. That was the hardest thing I think I ever had to do.
She said, if you leave, why, I don't ever want you to come back again.
Long, hard life. But
you know what I see now? I see the peasant with a wagon and hay to take me away. The whole town was around my wagon. Everybody came to say goodbye. I didn't know how to say goodbye.
Poland, Russia, Romania, and everybody just wanted to get out of jail.
I didn't pay no tickets. Get on a train and buy for luck.
They cared us just like you would care load a bunch of pigs. If you're gonna move a bunch of calves, a bunch of pigs, would you put them in a passenger car? That's the way they looked at us.
Many passenger lines made a tidy business of immigration to America. creating logistical operations that could house, transport, feed, and process as many as 4,000 immigrants at a time. They also pre-screened immigrants to weed out the ones that the American authorities might reject and return to Europe at the steamship line's expense.
First thing they do with you is delouse you. Lock your hair all. Your hair, if there was a knot in your hair, you'd have to have shampoo.
The majority of immigrants into Ellis Island traveled in steerage class, on a journey that could span from a week to a month. For some, it was a voyage of monotony and boredom, yet for others, the crossing could be one of misery and seasickness.
They gave us a tin plate with a fork and a spoon, a cup of soup, and that much bread, 15 days.
There's all one big room. I was in the cellar. There's little lights going on there all the time. Little lights. We were riding in the steerage like animals.
You could see a lot of water, but we didn't see the sky. No sky.
She was sick all the time. People didn't know where the toilets were, and so they'd use it. It was a terrible life.
I prayed one night that ship would go down. It was so horrible. It had to stop for a while. For some, the waves was washing. I was very sick. Prayed it to go down.
There's only one thing in my mind. I wanted to get out of there and to come to America.
It appeared like in a fog, and everybody went over to the railing and just admiring.
I thought I was in heaven. My God, is this a city on earth, or this is a city in heaven? Never seen a building that big, but beautiful.
Everybody was just waiting to get off standing waiting to get off that ship. You were just wondering where you were coming to or what was going to happen to you, in your mind.
While first and cabin class passengers were processed by immigration officials on board the ship they arrived on, immigrants in steerage were crowded onto barges and ferries for yet another ride from the Hudson River Pier to Ellis Island in the Upper Bay, as they slowly approached the gateway to America, provided they could successfully navigate the immigration process that lay ahead.
I couldn't get my eyes on that. It's great. I was kind of glad to see Ellis Island, as bad as it was. It was good to see any kind of land. It was.
According to the houses I left in my town, this was like a whole city that I almost felt smaller than I am.
But when I came to these doors, I saw all these people there. I figured, well, I guess I'll have to stay here for good, probably, because all these people, what are they doing here? And nobody was happy. You don't know what's going to happen.
I had a coat and a dress and a pair of shoes. That's it.
One suitcase I had with me. And about $50, I guess.
My basket, my little basket, that's all I had with me.
You were lucky to have the one.
We had no other possessions but that. We had no baggage. We had nothing.
Nothing except the clothes. We had nothing.
Jesus, Mary and Joseph, I says, where am I?
They would come right into the big hall, and there they were told to sit and stay there. And they didn't know where they were. It was a new land, but they hadn't been in land. It was just a big hall. And all you could get was tears and crying of the children. So they all had this fear, this worry. They were worried about police because they were always checked in the other countries.
The word government frightened me. Government was tyranny. Government was officers who looked at you with the sense that they wanted to hate you or eliminate you. And the idea that there is democracy or that the policeman will help you was very new to me. A policeman, to me, was someone who could cut my head off.
It was the most dangerous thing for everybody to go through it. In the eyes.
Disease was the immigrants' greatest fear.
If there's anything that put a chalk mark here, a chalk mark there.
Those identified to be set aside for possible rejection represented a small percentage examined each day. But this was little consolation to a family separated.
You didn't have to know the people, but you know that somebody's missing. The agony they went through. So you know that somebody's missing in the family.
All of a sudden, the thought, my goodness, they're separating us. Because that's what the police always did. They separated the men from the women and then took care of the women and children. As long as some member of the family, some loving member of the family was with you, life was tolerable. You lived in a relationship of family love. Even though the other members of the family, you didn't know where they were, you could converse, you could plan, you could warm each other.
I had a feeling that I'm left all alone. It's a terrible feeling. All of a sudden they were gone.
America did not want the burden of an unhealthy immigrant. America wanted a person who could make a living and was not bringing into the country an infectious disease.
And they knocked your back over with your lungs and your heart. And you were sent from one to the other, one doctor to the other.
And a lot of people was put away on the side.
I wouldn't want to have been sent there.
People were rejected because they showed outward signs of illness, what they considered mental difficulties. We didn't call it psychiatry, they called it neurology. And we said, we're sorry. And the ship that brought them had to take them back. That was a tragedy.
I decided if they ever have to send me back, I'll jump down to the water and never go back to Russia. I never want to see it again.
Built for 1,500, the dining room often fed 3,000 a day.
There would be dishes and forks and knives and white napkin, long tables, well set. But when the people went in, it was like chaos. And they handed us food. Food was not something people gave you. I didn't like it, but then I tasted it again. I never had seen a banana before.
To me, this white bread was like cake already.
The flood of immigrants through Ellis Island brought with them their deepest hopes for a better life, but many arrived with a wide variety of highly infectious diseases. In a time before antibiotics, contagions like cholera, diphtheria, typhus, tuberculosis, and polio could spread throughout communities with fatal consequence, which made Ellis Island a key barrier to the spread of infectious diseases into American cities. While wealthy first-class passengers were hardly given more than a glance before clearance, for those arriving in steerage class, A thorough medical examination stood between their freedom in America or a swift deportation back to where they came. Each morning, the Great Hall filled with noise and human bustle as immigrants got their papers in order. There were letters from relatives affirming that the newcomer would not become a public charge. Other letters affirmed that the immigrant was not a contract worker or a dangerous alien. In rooms off the Great Hall, other immigrants were given additional scrutiny and the opportunity to make their case before skeptical immigration officials. And while only 2% of all immigrants were rejected, before deportation proceedings began, a rejected immigrant could make a solitary appeal to a board of inquiry. Every arriving immigrant had to climb the large staircases that led to the Great Hall. At the top stood a line of uniformed public health officers who watched intently for signs of heart trouble from the climb, breathing difficulties, or any kind of physical or mental impairment. The immigrants would then be interrogated by members of the U.S. Immigration Bureau, asking each new arrival why they came to America and how they intended to support themselves. They were then herded past a dozen or so doctors working the line, as it was known, who had 30 seconds to determine whether the immigrant in front of them merited a more comprehensive medical exam. 1 in 5 immigrants received a chalk mark indicating a suspected condition, which would subsequently open them up for further testing and diagnosis in one of the 3 main hospitals.
I couldn't understand English, not one word.
First question, how much money have you got?
She had to have £5. My father, I remember, gave me that £5.
Do you know how long? It took a couple of years, 2 and 3 years, to get that $25.
My mother, when we got nearer and the person at the desk called our names, my mother turned to me, she says, I was never here. How does she know my name? I said, it's all right, Mom. She knows it.
They asked me my name, and I told them Licht. They say, how do you spell it? Well, I didn't know how to spell it, and they didn't know it, and they spelled it Licht. I said, it's all right for me. I don't know the difference.
But then they said, all right, you can go.
You're free to go.
To Hoboken.
For the majority of immigrants who passed through Ellis Island, there would still be challenges in their newly adopted homeland. What food to buy for railroad journeys to cities like Chicago or Boston? What tickets to buy to places with unpronounceable names like Hoboken, Pittsburgh, Louisville, and Puyallup, many without the slightest understanding of the English language. But either way, one of their biggest hurdles was now behind them, now that the door to America had officially been opened. More than 350 babies were delivered on the island, many of the newborns named after the doctors and nurses who helped them into the world. On the downside, however, more than 3,500 arriving immigrants died on the island, making the 27-acre landmark a key focal point in the story of America.
It was as if God's great promise had been fulfilled.
I'm going into a free land. I don't think I ever can explain that feeling that I had that time. There isn't such a thing to be explained. It came out of my system.
It's not my native land, but it means more to me than my native land. It means more to me than my native land.
Any country on earth, this never happened. It's a miracle.
I'm glad I'm here. Couldn't be any better, could it?
And everybody had hopes. And one thing I was sure, in thousands like me, that the degradation, the abuse, and the privation that we had in Europe, we wouldn't have here.
Today's Daily Dose documentary is brought to you by PlatoSpeech.com, a lesson planning tool leveraging content like this and much more for educators and homeschooling parents. Check out the description for more information so that you too can teach something new every day.